Daddy, could you please fix my Christmas tree?
Sure, baby. Hi, and welcome to Dad Fixed It. My name is Eric, and this is my family. We're a family of 6 living in the Northeast. As you can imagine, life is pretty expensive. To help us out, I try to fix everything I can around our house to help save money. I'm not a plumber, a carpenter, a mason, or an electrician, but I try my best with what I have. Hopefully, I can help you fix something and save you a lot of money. Come along on this journey, and let's learn together. Let's fix it. Welcome back, my friends, to another chilly day here in the Northeast. It is almost Christmas, and this is my favorite time of the year. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited. About a week to go. Man, I just love the songs, the food, the lights, the good times with family, and I'm thankful. So with Christmas comes toys if you have kids, and bringing out old toys that they had last year, the year before, that typically don't get used until Christmas. And here we have my daughter's Playmobil Christmas tree. And as you saw, it doesn't work. It's supposed to be able to turn on and light up, look really cute. So today, let's see if we can fix it. So here we have this little guy. Let's take it apart and see if we can figure out what's going on here. You can see the little LEDs in there. First, we're going to take off the battery door. The batteries out. And yes, these are fresh batteries. And yep, these are snap-on. It's my favorite little mini set of screwdrivers. I've had these things for so long too. They're just, I don't know, just love them. Anyway, let's take a look inside this thing. Oh, and look at that. This is something you typically find with these little toys, where it was soldered for the battery terminals. It's broken. So this one's easy because we can see the positive still there. It's just the negative. We don't have to guess which one goes where or try to map it out. So I guess today we're going to turn this into a soldering project. Let's get started. I feel like soldering is one of those things that really freaks a lot of people out. It's not rocket science. I'm sure I don't know all the perfect steps to do, but I'm going to show you today that instead of throwing a toy like this out, you can easily fix it with like 20 bucks in equipment. And the 20 bucks you'll spend on a soldering iron. I'll list some below. Some ones from Amazon that are decent. Weller makes a pretty good one. You can get them at Home Depot and in the big box stores. You don't need anything crazy. It's not like it's something you're using every day professionally. And it's a tool that, although it will sit unused most of the time, a few times when you do need it, you'll be thankful you have it. So let me show you what we need to do this. I almost forgot too. Magnetic screw tray. Keep those little screws safe. All right, so the first thing you're going to need is a soldering iron. This here is from my collection from 20 years ago. It is indeed a snap-on. I honestly doubt they actually probably made it. Another company probably made it for them. But, it's a basic, 15 watt. Oh, this one's a 40 watt soldering iron. Works great. The second thing you're going to need is some good solder. And get yourself some flux core solder. This one is actually a leaded solder, so you want to be careful. You don't want to breathe the fumes when you're soldering with it, and you want to wash your hands after you handle it, just for safety's sake. Granted, it's very little exposure, but it's better to be safe than sorry. But definitely get a flux core solder. It keeps you from having to mess with flux, keep another tube of something around, or a little can of paste that's something else to get lost. This will kind of get you through most things that you have to fix without needing that little can of flux. A set of strippers for thin gauge wire, and I'm going to show you, honestly, you don't even need these, but it's nice to have. And last but not least, a piece of cardboard. I'm going to show you why. One of the best tips I can give you when you solder something is make sure what you're using and the parts that you're soldering are clean. That's one of the biggest keys to having a good solder connection. Clean it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to plug it in so that it has time to heat up properly. Now you can see most soldering irons want to end up tipping over. They make fancy soldering stations, the helping hands, all these other things. A lot of them will come with a little stand to put it on to keep it up at an angle, and because you don't want this laying on your table. It will start a fire if you have anything near. It'll damage the wood. So typically what I do is I just put it on like a set of vice grips, just something like that. Keep it off of the work surface. And we're going to let it heat up for a bit. While that's heating up, let's prep the wires. So you can see here, this terminal coming from the battery negative has a good amount of solder on it. You always want to do what they call tinning, whatever you're going to be working on first, which means we're going to be connecting this little black wire to this terminal. We want the terminal to have solder on it first, and we also want the wire to have solder on it before we actually try to melt them together and create a good bond. So you can see this isn't a circumstance where we need to actually remove the solder that's here. We can actually use this. It's not a circuit board where we need to be more precise. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to take a look at this guy. You can see the wire looks like it's in decent shape. Now, the easiest thing is to use a wire stripper, but if you don't have a wire stripper, I'll show you a little trick. With wire this thin, you can kind of roll it under your fingernail. You can see that. Kind of create a little bit of an edge, and you can usually just peel it right off. And now your wire's there, it's good. Now here's something to check out. I don't know if you can see this, but that wire just looks like copper. It's not green, it doesn't have corrosion on it, it doesn't look gross. If you see that this has some sort of like goop on it, if the insulation's melted on it, if it's green from corrosion, looks like maybe water damage or battery leakage got in there, you need to keep cutting this back until you get clean copper. If you don't have clean copper, you're not going to get a solid bond with your solder. So what you want to do is cut yourself off a little piece of manageable solder, usually about 4 inches, 5 inches is what I like to work with because you don't need a lot. And you need to test to see if your soldering iron is hot enough. And the easiest way to do that is just by touching the solder to the tip. And when it starts to melt, you can see it melting there, you know it's hot enough. But remember what I said to you before about cleaning your soldering iron and cleaning the materials that you're going to be soldering? The wires, the terminal pads, all have to be clean. You can see this thing, I didn't do a good job last time I put this thing away, the last time I used it. It's got a bunch of oxidation on there. That happens from the flux in the core of the solder. It gets gunked up and it will transition or it will put that junk, that oxidation into your solder joint, which you don't want to happen. So they make all kinds of stuff to clean these things. A lot of them will come with a sponge you're supposed to wet, and you just dip it in the sponge and wipe it off real quick. There's another set of I don't know, material. It looks almost like Brillo, like thick Brillo, that you can actually put it into and work it back and forth. There's another option out there. This is one of the easiest ways, I think, to clean your soldering iron. Take your piece of cardboard, keep your hands free, clear of the back of it, poke it through real quick. You obviously do not want to leave it in there for a long period of time, but it does a fantastic job of cleaning the tip of your soldering iron. And it's disposable. See what a good job that did? Got almost all of it off. And you want to make sure that there is some solder left at the tip of your soldering iron. It's called tinning the tip as well, or tipping, I think they call it. And if it's really dirty and grimy, you could take something like a brass brush and brush it off. But you can see, and this is an old tip, it's seen better days, but it'll work. And the cardboard works perfectly well to clean it. So before we go on, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to apply a little bit more solder back to that tip and let it melt into any spots where we may have brushed it off. And again, take our cardboard and we'll clean it again. And that's not bad. Sorry, having focus issues today. All right, now that our tip has been cleaned and it's hot enough, what we're going to do is we're going to tin the wire. So you don't want a huge blob of solder on there, just a little bit, but you also want it completely covered so that you don't see copper anymore. So what you do is you'll hold the soldering iron on the wire a little bit, just heat up the solder, heat up the wire. And then you'll see it'll, at some point when the copper gets hot enough, it will cling to the wire and it will now look silver when you look at it up close. You can see it's silver. And it actually melted a little bit of the insulation away because this is probably really cheap stuff. But anyway, we only want to really work with the tip. And I'll probably cut a little bit off so that we're working with a fresh spot. And now we can easily join these two together. Watch, this is so simple. It really isn't rocket science. And I know there are more than 1, 2, 3, 5, 9 ways to skin a cat. Is this the perfect right way to do it? No. You know, if you're working in a lab, if you're doing sensitive electronics, there are much better ways to solder, much more accurate ways to solder. This is just to fix your kids' toys. This is a perfectly safe, acceptable way to do this. It will work, it'll hold up, and you'll make your kid happy. And it's something you can practice on without a lot of consequence if it doesn't go well. So what we're going to do is we are going to heat up this pad. Once we see that get a little bit fluid, see it just go fluid there? And see how now our wire goes in there nice and kind of dips into the pool. We'll remove it. You hold it for about 5 seconds till it doesn't move anymore. Look at that. We have a nice, solid connection. And if there's a little bit of extra room on there, sometimes I like to take a little piece of tape and put that on there since it was kind of a cheap insulation and melted away. Just to put a little extra on so it doesn't ever short. Not necessary, but an extra step I typically like to take. Now I give a little more security. And that's it. So you can see this wire is now soldered back on. It's nice and strong. I'm pulling on it pretty hard. This guy is still on there. That'll be all right. So let's put this thing back together. I almost forgot to say, don't forget to clean your soldering iron when you're done with it. You can see just after doing that, that there's a little more junk on there. We use our cardboard and now it's pretty clean. And we'll unplug it and let it cool down. All right, we've soldered it. Let's put it back together. A nice little tray. All right. Let's put the tree back on. We'll see if it works. All right. She's going to be so happy. All right, my friends, that's a wrap. And I'd say that was a success. We fixed my daughter's little toy. She's going to be super pumped about that. You can see soldering is not hard at all. It just takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of time. I mean, will that take us 5-10 minutes today? And just the right tools. So I'm going to leave a couple links below from some ones I found on Amazon. Really inexpensive. It's a good thing to invest in, a good tool to have around. It might really save your butt one day. A couple things to keep in mind. Again, clean the surfaces. Make sure the wire is clean or whatever you're soldering is clean. If you have to use leaded solder, don't breathe it. Wash your hands when you're done and get a good flux core solder. That really makes your life a lot easier and omits a couple other steps. Pretty straightforward stuff. You know, maybe one day we could do a more advanced soldering video where we, you know, move some jumpers on a circuit board or something like that and you have to use a solder sucker and really clean things. If you're interested, let me know. Drop a comment down below and maybe we could do a video on that. As we head into the holidays, I hope you have an absolutely blessed holiday as we celebrate the birth of Christ. That's the real reason we celebrate Christmas, and I'm especially thankful. If you ever want to have a conversation with me about that, I'd love to. You can drop a note down in the comments. But if not, that's okay too. Have an absolutely Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll see you next time.